what's going on? Where are you in the world? What are you thinking about at the moment? How are you?
I'm good. I'm currently in East Hampton. It's about 2 hours away from New York City. It's not far from where Jackson Pollock had a house and a studio, and William de Kooning. So it's an area where there's like a rich history of painters coming to escape New York. And I'm working on my show. I have like an upcoming show with Pace Gallery in 2023. So I'm really sort of really trying to focus on that and devoting my time to that and this project as well. I still have to paint the skateboards for this project.
Is there an aspect to that neighborhood, as you say, the spirits of past artistic legends are alive? Do you feel that when you're working there, or is it more just happenstance that you're there as well?
I feel a certain energy. I mean, I could understand the draw for artists or painters to come here as like a refuge from New York City. It's such a polar opposite of New York City, but it's only 2 hours away, and I can see how many artists are inspired by this place, and there's a lot of contemporary artists that are here as well. So I understand the draw to this place as a sort of refuge from the madness of New York City. But I'm not, I mean, it's East Hampton, it's the Hamptons, but I'm not involved in the whole. I feel a little bit like an outsider here. I'm not so part of like the Hampton scene. It's a lot of Wall Street banker bros and big millionaires and billionaires, and I feel partially removed from that. I'm more in the surfer artist community here, not so much the moneyed mega mansion community.
Yeah. Okay. Wow. Well, we wanted to say thank you just on behalf of the Skate Room for joining us under this model to release these art pieces and to raise money for Seven Hills. And I wanted to ask you what went into your decision to collaborate with us on this. What is it about this project that?
Well, I like what Skate Room is doing. I like the idea of helping out less fortunate communities. I think it's my responsibility as an artist to sort of be engaged beyond just the art world. Like a lot of times I'm asked to donate for charities in the art world, but I feel like the art world has plenty of money in the art world, and I feel like this is a perfect opportunity to help in some completely other way outside of the art world. And I just think it's just my responsibility to help raise funds for a project like this, and it excites me because I'm hoping that I can maybe even go there and be more engaged with the project, more hands-on.
Definitely. I mean, that would be an amazing thing to work out with you. So let's definitely try and figure it out. And I guess your background's really, you came from a surfer background, right? You grew up surfing and you continue to surf now. And I know from every video I've seen, people like to see you skating around your studio as well.
Yeah.
It's a common shot. So do you have kind of first-hand experience with how surfing or skateboarding can kind of impact young communities and stuff in a positive way?
I mean, I grew up in the 80s in Southern California when it was skateboarding is not a crime, when it was really, made into this sort of bad, negative stereotype of the rebellious bad boy. And it's funny to see how it's finally been co-opted into mainstream culture, and it's become like every kid skateboards now, whereas in the 80s it was still more a little bit a fringe kind of activity. But I think for me, surfing and skateboarding in high school really provided like another outlet or sort of tribe or community outside of conventional school sports, or team player sports. I was much more drawn to the freedom that skateboarding and surfing, offered. And I think what's really important in skateboarding and surfing is for younger kids, it really is a place that sort of provides like a mentorship. Like you can easily have like a lot of children can have role models or people to look up to. I almost think about it as like a skate park is where you find a brother for the people that don't have brothers, or a father for the people that don't have fathers. In a sense, the skate park becomes like a modern day forum or playground where where ideas are exchanged, like music is exchanged. It's like the younger kids are always looking up to, idolizing the adults and sort of inspired by them. So I think it's vital and important to the community to have this sort of like it's a gathering of a tribe or a community where ideas can flourish and things can be exchanged. And surfing as well. Surfing was that for me as well. There was always, the older surfers, the better surfers that you wanted to emulate or look up to, and provided a real mentorship. And I think it's crucial when you're a young kid, especially in a world that's so surrounded with so much virtual reality and social media, to actually have an activity in real life, engaging with people in not in the virtual, but in the real, is becoming more and more almost of a novelty thing in a strange way.
Yeah, I think that was really beautiful about the skate park as a forum where you can find a sort of secondary or a supportive family for you, that can guide you through aspects of your life. And definitely with the Seven Hills project, this skate park and the skate parks that they have and the programs that they run, they encourage children from so many different backgrounds to come. And these are children who, because of the political climate of man, wouldn't otherwise naturally mix, you know what I mean? And so it's almost directly breaking down kind of prejudices and barriers in that way, which is also really, really amazing to see. That it kind of doesn't matter where in the world you build a skate park, it has the same effect.
And that's what I've always loved about the skateboarding community, even more than the surf community, is I feel like it's very tolerant and anti-racist and pro LGBT and pro open community. There's no real hierarchy or sense of exclusion. I feel like it's a very inclusionary sport, where men, women, black, gay, it doesn't matter. There's no color lines drawn. It's open and a loving community in general, I feel like.
Yeah, I think that there's definitely a movement as you said, as it became incredibly popularized, you started seeing the forces of money making it more exclusive, and there's been a rise of like a new wave of skaters. You see like the new rise of women skateboarding or LGBT plus skateboarders responding to that and like rewriting the balance, which I think is a really, really beautiful thing of the culture. I wanted to ask you where art kind of plays into skateboarding. Do you think there's an inherent link between art and skateboarding as expression? Are they similar, or how do these two things converse in your life?
I think there's definitely a strong. I think there's definitely a strong connection, and I think for a lot of artists that are now my age, I can't hear. I always hear and mention how a lot of these artists in the 80s and 90s were heavily inspired by a lot of the skateboard graphics. Like that was when you're in a suburb in LA, that was one of the few access points to any kind of creative art, was, the bottom of the Santa Cruz skateboard or the Vision skateboard or the Pau Peralta designs. It was our access to some form of art. Maybe now it's considered lowbrow, but to us, it was the ultimate art form, was the design on skate decks.
Yeah.
And I think skateboarding and surfing are both really kind of solo operating, sports or activities. Both of them are really independent. There's no team, there's no boss. You're sort of on your own making decisions. And when I think of a skater in a skate park or a surfer on a wave, I think everyone has their own idiosyncratic style, their own particular lines they're drawing in a skate park, skating or surfing. And same with mark making on a canvas. So in a lot of ways, it's like an imprint of your soul, whether it's on the canvas or on the skate park. It's your spirit or your energy is being transformed in this kind of improvised dance in a way. It's like skateboarding is just an improvised response to the urban landscape, and painting is a response to this blank canvas. What's your psychological and emotional transfer that you put on this canvas? And they're both in this kind of fleeting moment. The second you drop into that skate park, it's like nothing else matters. All your attention is 100% devoted to that. Just as when someone is finally fully immersed in a painting, it's just full attention to that fleeting moment, really.
I guess, it's sort of a flow state that you enter.
Yeah, it's a flow state and an immediate improvised response to that very lived moment.
Yeah.
So I think there is a lot of parallels in a lot of ways.
Amazing. And we've spoken a little bit about Seven Goals, but is there something really specific about this project that attracts you? I mean, you say you want to visit it, and you still very much at the early stages of your relationship with that project, but is there something already that you can kind of say stands out to you about it?
About this project in Jordan?
Yeah.
Well, anytime I see these images of children skating in different countries like Ethiopia, Morocco, it always brings a smile to me to see a country that maybe 5 years ago didn't have any access to skateboarding, and suddenly you're seeing these poorer countries have this immense opportunity. And I think also it's more and more important now, more than ever, with so much virtual reality, whether it's TikTok or Instagram or this whole social media world. I think it's more and more important to have some kind of like actual physical in real life engagement with humans. It's becoming more and more of like it's becoming more and more almost of an old pastime to actually see people in real life. I feel like just like people don't call each other anymore, they just text. I feel like people also don't even really engage in real life anymore. And I think it's more important than ever to still have this physical community. Like the skate park brings together a physical community of people of all ages and all types together. So like I was saying earlier, the skate park in a way becomes like a public forum in a sense, or the modern day playground where ideas are exchanged and you can be inspired by music. New music is introduced, new fashion is introduced. It becomes a congregation of ideas and people of all types. And I think it's crucial. Mm-hmm. And also I look forward to maybe hopefully going to Jordan. I'd like to maybe somehow be a direct participant and maybe help paint the skate park, or maybe do a painting on skateboard, a workshop there. I would love to actually do something on my end too, not just experience it virtually, the skate park, through my Instagram, but I want to actually go there and hopefully.
Well, it's worth talking about, as I say, as a small aside, that they are now creating a mural in the skate park as well. So it could be a nice opportunity. But we can talk about it separately, because I think it would be a really amazing thing, or at least to have you go out there and visit, because they also have the Chief arts workshop space which they've built, which does art as well as craft, as well as a radio project. So it also teaches a lot more than just the skateboarding to the kids.
Or we could maybe do a workshop where they paint on their skateboards, like upcycling your skateboarding and repainting it, or adding your own graphic. Like what if every kid made their own custom model, their model, like what would their model be, like
that'd be really
it'd be a fun project.
We work it out. Cool. So as part of this collection, you're releasing limited editions, skateboard art pieces, and you're also releasing a unique artwork. How's the process with the unique original going?
Sorry, my phone fell. Sorry. What were you saying?
I was saying you're releasing, alongside limited edition skateboard art pieces with the skate room, you're also releasing a unique art piece, an original. How's the process going? Are you already kind of in it, or is it still ideation? Where are you at in that process right now?
It's still brewing in my mind, but I know what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna start it next week, but it's a surprise, but I think it's a good link to all the other paintings, all the other boards I have in the show. I think this is a nice piece that kind of maybe ties them all together in a way.
Beautiful. Okay. And how does your, maybe because you want it to be a surprise, but how does your approach change when you're working on a skateboard as a canvas as opposed to canvas?
You know, I still try to think of it as an individual painting, even though it's a triptych. I still try to think of it as one single image.
Mm-hmm.
But what I do like is I like that all of a sudden the painting can become this sort of fractured painting or broken into three parts. So I like to be able to see, even though it's conceived as one painting, I like to then be able to see each board as its individual form and see the painting that's within that bigger painting as an individual painting.
Mm-hmm.
I like the extracting of one part of the painting into a single painting. You know, it's not something I would necessarily conceive of, but then I like to see the surprise that happens when one board is isolated on its own as its own image.
But you must not be able to fully escape from that skateboard graphic mentality you had when you were growing up. Like, is there a sort of sense in which you're thinking iconically about that when you're creating? Because, you know, with a painting, you're thinking of maybe more of a scene, or I don't know, but with a board, can you shake the idea that it is connected to that childhood nostalgia of skateboard graphics? Do you know what I mean?
I think maybe those ideas of the early skateboard graphics are still inherently in my mind. Like even my more landscape-based paintings or my more image-based paintings, they still sort of operate iconographically. Like it's almost like it's very head-on, direct, high impact visual sort of. It's not overly composed. It's really kind of like centralized. Yeah, almost like propaganda or iconography. You know, like I like the painting to be a direct hit. Even the pool, it's kind of like smack center. The New Arrivals painting, I like things to be kind of hit you graphically with sort of power and maybe a lack of subtlety. You know, I want it to almost be hard hitting or visually just powerful. And maybe that's just competing with skateboard graphic, or maybe that's competing with advertising or propaganda in general. Yeah, I think about it almost more like iconography or branding, or this sort of Warholian, like the central icon and image, and there it is. And I sort of operate like that too a little bit.
You know, when you were born in Paris, right? You live in New York. You're also now in the Hamptons, but not the Hamptons. And you spend a long period of time in Costa Rica. Is that the full list of places you like to kind of split your time, or what brings you to these places individually? Is it sort of just how you're feeling at the time, or is there a reason you go and spend because of a creative process? Like what draws you across these different places?
Well, I have no children that bind me to any specific place, and I think as a child, my mother, we were always moving. It was a little bit of a nomadic childhood, and I think I've sort of kept that lifestyle as I've grown older. And yes, I was born in France. I grew up in California. Then I moved to New York 22 years ago, and I've been in New York now for a long time. But I think inherently, I am I'm less of a city person. I'm more of a country ocean person. And as much as I love the city and the vitality and energy of New York City, really I'm drawn to nature and the peacefulness of nature and the serenity of nature and the escape of nature. So I divide half my time between New York really and Costa Rica now, more and more. I'm really in these two jungles, the urban jungle and the proper jungle. And I love working in both spaces. It allows me a completely different state of mind and way of working. I think when I'm in Costa Rica, I'm working, my studio's partially outside. I'm working, it's a little bit more of a primitive studio. There's less materials, so I have to deal with limited resources. There's something more spontaneous, maybe something more organic, fluid when I'm working in Costa Rica. And when I'm in New York, it's a little bit more of a regimented, more thought out process of working. It's a little bit less, so it's a mix of this sort of primitive, intuitive way of working in Costa Rica and this more logical, linear, objective way of working in New York. So it's these two sort of different states of mind that I can allow myself to be in. And I like this contrast, or I like these kind of opposing forces of these two extremities. It really is these two extremities of physical spaces.
With you spoke about new arrivals, which for me really conjures the kind of California drought birth of skateboarding in my head as a skater. How does that kind of fit into this? Where does this sit on the spectrum of regimented to kind of free Costa Rica beach jungle creative process? Like it does, because it feels quite peaceful as a painting.
Well, I have yeah, that painting is in one of the series that I did with SKATEROOM, and then there's also Pats Ticos and Gringos, and that one's a direct sort of reference to Costa Rica, and the New Arrivals is a direct reference to my upbringing in California, even though one is so urban and concrete based and the other one is so nature and sort of organic based. They're very different in physical landscape, but they're both sort of dealing with escapism. You know, these people on the fringes trying to find their own little momentary refuge, whether it's cleaning up an old abandoned pool or these tourists wandering through the jungle on horses. But I think the pool for me is an interesting icon to work with growing up in California, because it has such this sort of utopian image, the pool. And when I think of like David Hockney's pools and that he was painting in the 60s and 70s, it has this certain hopeful Edenic quality to it. And I think I'm interested in, I'm a different generation. I'm 50 years old. I'm this Generation X. And I think there's a little bit more of a maybe less hopeful vision of the world or the pool. This is the pool post Hockney, where it's no longer the opportunity and hopefulness of the 60s Hockney. This is sort of this is the new world order of you know, there's environmental catastrophe, there's mortgage foreclosures. So it's I think I'm presenting a little bit the new reality of the pool. What is the Generation X interpretation of the pool? What is how do we see these icons or images? And so I'm interested in representing these images through the current lens of our world, you know, which I feel like is less hopeful or less optimistic in a way.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, definitely. The dried up pool is. It's funny because, as you say, your generation, it's a less optimistic, but it also is it's a form of escapism. And when I see this image, it's almost like a nostalgic, imaginary world I was never a part of, but the culture that, you know, guided my upbringing through skateboarding. You know, so for me, there's also the nostalgic, almost you almost wish to be able to experience that, even though it's maybe a more pessimistic image.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah. I mean, yeah, it's super nice to be able to have those two things contrasted a little bit, those two pieces. Maybe we can talk a bit about looking for an enlightened cowboy. Do you know who that figure is? Is it you, or where are they headed, and what are they really searching for?
I mean, a lot of times it's difficult for me to put language to these images because they really arise from like an intuitive, unplanned place. So at first, this painting began as a fully abstract painting, and then eventually I sort of mine the image out of these forms, and all of a sudden, next thing you know, there's a mountain, and then there's a cowboy. But I think on a deeper, more subconscious level, I think it could kind of become a cliche or metaphor for, I mean, the cowboy is the ultimate emblem of America, or the icon of America, or the U.S., the lone rugged cowboy. But I think it's sort of, to me, represents almost, this mountain becomes almost like this huge obstacle that America is facing right now. We're such this time of where democracy has never been under such a threat, and we're dealing with, like, America is dealing with this midlife crisis right now, with all these deep rooted troubles resurfacing, whether it's racism or sexism or homophobia or Trumpism. And I think it's sort of, the mountain range becomes an obstacle to cross to get to a new, more hopeful chapter. And will America be able to cross this mountain range? Will we be able to get to the other side, in a way? Again, when I made this, I wasn't really conscious of it, and now upon deeper introspection, I realize it's something to do with that, or isolation, also loneliness. I mean, I think America is isolated, so it becomes like a metaphor for many things. But I also like the idea that the viewer, reads his own interpretation into whatever that represents.
Yeah, of course. It's it's quite again, it has that kind of hopeful and isolated interplay. Like, you can kind of view it as either, and as you say, it's the absolute epitome of American frontierism, the cowboy.
And looking for an enlightened cowboy, not just a cowboy, but an enlightened one who can see, who can see beyond, and can see reason and right and hope.
What you said you sort of started that one as a more abstract piece. Paint is really your medium, but do you ever feel yourself kind of repelled away from paint, or is there something that frustrates you or feels limiting about that as a form? Or where does your kind of artistic process sit in terms of experimenting with different materials?
I think first and foremost, painting has always been my most the material I'm most drawn to as far as working creatively, artistically. Of course, there's moments of frustration with painting, but in general, I love the idea of painting as this really primitive. What I love about painting is it's really this primitive thing where you literally have a stick with animal hairs on the end of it, and then you're mixing these pigments, and it really becomes almost this archaic, ancient activity. It's just that's been done for thousands and thousands of years. So I'm drawn to the alchemy or the transfer of information that happens through something as basic as these sticks with animal hairs on them and pigments at the end of these sticks. And then what is the combustion, or the thing that happens that creates an image? And for me, it's also interesting, again, these two different states of being, where initially I'm working in a very intuitive, matter of fact, sort of direct way, and then eventually, out of that sort of primitive subconscious process, eventually becomes a more logical reason and image and story. So it's this merging of these two states of mind that I like about painting. At the same time, this primitive, crude, improvised dance, and then all of a sudden this moment where you direct yourself into a logical, linear sort of narrative. So I'm interested in this place where these two kind of coalesce together. Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally. It's nice to think about it in that way. but there are a lot of primitive forms of creation as well. I mean, sculpture is you're using your hands,
Yeah.
you know. But it's interesting to me. I wonder whether you ever have I don't know how your kind of ideas come to you. Is that kind of dead question? But like when you have a moment of inspiration, whether you ever feel like actually this piece isn't a painting, this is something else, or whether it really comes through the process of painting that your artwork comes alive. I'm just interested to see if you ever feel like you would push into another form.
I would like to get back into working in ceramics, in clay a little bit. That's something that was sort of my initial step into art, was ceramics and clay. And sometimes I think I'd like to go back into that world a little bit, and just because that also is a really direct way of working that is not painting that I really enjoy. But painting is still in general my go-to form.
Okay. You mentioned you try and avoid putting too many words to these pieces you create, but since we've covered all of the pieces except for Idle Hands, I wanted to see if you did have something to say about that piece, and maybe its kind of social or political angle, because it feels much more like a scene that you're capturing as opposed to something more abstract, like looking for an enlightened cowboy.
Yeah, Idle Hands. I like titles that have a play on words. There's that expression in America, idle hands is the devil's playground, as in idle, as in IDLE, as in like non-working, or as in still idle. But mine is idle as in the sense of idols, as in the sense of people you look up to or mentors. But so I like this play of words. But idle hands, these are people that are holding these signs of these different faces. And I like this idea that each face is either a mentor or an idea or an ideology that they're commemorating or fighting for. But it's all these different people congregating, and I like this idea of these people with so much conviction that they're out on the street, sort of drawing attention to a specific cause or person, versus the idle hands of the people, not doing anything, just passively consuming, versus these people sort of championing a hero or an idea. So, but it's all these people congregating, and they all have their different idol or mentor, and that challenge of what that is. Does that make any sense?
Yeah. Do you have an idol or a mentor that you would be carrying if you were in that scene?
Do I have? Oh, I have many, but no, not one specific one I would draw attention to. No. No.
Cool. Well, I have really one really last thing I wanted to just ask you about. I don't know if how much you've dived into the display that we've developed together for the Brussels Gallery weekend presentation. So when you're in Brussels at the SKATEROOM Gallery, what were your thoughts on the setting there? What's your feeling of the way that your work will be presented in Brussels?
I saw the example of what they did with Cindy Sherman, and I really like just graphically what they did with the colors of the ramp and the walls, and I also saw the PR package that SKATEROOM sent me, and I fully trust the design PR team over at SKATEROOM, because I like everything I've seen so far. So I've done my art with the skateboards, and I trust you guys to sort of create the atmosphere or that will encompass the work. Like I have no doubt that it'll look great. Like I saw the different color options they sent, and it'll be nice to see all these pieces sort of coexisting together in one room, because they're all these pieces that we've used for the skate room were from the last 10 years, but made at different times. So it'll be nice to see these paintings coexisting in one room together for a very specific purpose.
Yeah, amazing. Cool. Well, maybe one last tiny question, because I remember watching a video of your heavyweight LA exhibition. There's a moment where you're still in the gallery with a paintbrush, saying, you know, you just have to know when it's finished. How do you know when a painting is finished?
Well, usually I'm working on multiple paintings at once, and often I'll start one painting and then I'll make another painting that I believe is like in response to the previous painting, or I think like, okay, if this is the queen, what's the king, or if this is the brother, what's the sister, or I kind of think of like creating like connections between paintings, or continuing some of the DNA from one painting into another painting. So often, once I'm working on multiple paintings at once, eventually maybe I've exhausted all my interest or energy for one painting, and all the energy now is devoted to these other paintings, and eventually that painting comes to an end. I mean, I think of each painting almost as a book, a page in a book, and I'm just continuing this sort of this sort of free associative narrative between one painting to another painting. So one painting eventually leads to the next painting, and then eventually I've exhausted my energy or my inspiration for the last painting, and it's now going on to the next page of the book, or the next painting, essentially. Does that make sense?
Yeah. But your feeling, I suppose, with all these paintings, with all these pieces for this collection, a long time ago, really more transposed into the editions. I'm curious to see whether you'll still be standing in the painting gallery with the paintbrush with your unique piece, still making a last touch or not.
I didn't totally hear the question. I'm making a new unique piece? Yeah.
No, I was saying that with your unique piece, you will still have an opportunity to make changes right until the moment we open the gallery in Brussels, because it's really unique. And I wonder whether or not, because I saw in that video with you in Heavyweight LA where you still added a little touch to a painting right before.
Yeah. Well, I think over the years I've learned to, try not to cram it all the very last minute, like do my homework before the test. So hopefully I won't be painting in the space. Hopefully I'll finally have it done before it ships out. But you never know. I'm still open to maybe painting on site. There might be a last minute correction I need to do.
Cool. Well, that's like a painting. You need to know when an interview is finished as well. So that's all we need from you today, man. Thank you so much for talking to me.
Thank you, Austin.